In this video, I'm going to show you how to take all of the parts that you've created for your sock puppet and insert them onto the actual puppet body. So lots of different techniques here. Really what it comes down to, the method that you use to attach something depends on the shape of the actual piece. Some are rounded and big at the attachment point. Others are very flat and skinny and thin. Others have more of a sort of a skinny end to them that especially if you want to insert and have them stick out of the puppet's head or body. So I'm going to suggest an order of attaching pieces that I think works the best. You decide for yourself what works for you. But I'm going to start with the eyes. I'm going to move all of these aside. The reason I start with eyes is because eyes are like the landmark. Once you have your eyes on, you sort of have a better idea where to put everything else. So go ahead and put the sock on that you plan to use, and then sort of decide, once you have it on, you can kind of look at it and decide where you think you want those eyes to be. So if I've decided this is where I want my eye, I'm going to go ahead and take my needle, and because my eye is fat, I'm going to just sort of put the needle roughly underneath where I want the eye to go. And I'm going to just move the eye aside and pull the needle up. I want to hide that knot, so at this point, I'm going to actually take the sock off, and I'm going to put the eye right on top of that knot that I had to hide the knot. And now I'm just going to go ahead. I'm on the puppet right now, so I go from the sock to the eye, and then I go forward a little ways, and I pull. And in this way, I'm going to work my way around the perimeter. Now I'm on the eye. From the eye, I go back to the sock. I go forward a little ways, and then I pull. This is what we call the ladder stitch. If you pull your stitches tight, again, from sock to eye, go up into the eye, go forward a little ways, and pull. In this way, you can kind of hide your stitches so they won't really show, because you pull them tight every time and it just pulls it right down against the body, so it sort of disappears. That's what we call the ladder stitch. Check that first video where it shows, or that first group of videos where it talks about different stitches. Watch that one in detail if you want to see a clearer view of this. I'm going to show you a second method for attaching eyes. It's called overcast. When you overcast, you just simply go from one directly to the other. You're not really going tunneling so much. You're just going along and going from sock to eye, from sock to eye every time. Just catching those two layers, trying to catch it on the edge, and just slowly working your way around. So that is another method. It's a little more visible when it's done, maybe not as nice of a finish, but if you find it easier, please go ahead and do it. It can be tricky to get the hang of the ladder stitch when you're trying to sew in a puppet. So experiment with both, see what works for you. Once you've got your eyes attached, now you sort of have an idea of where the rest of your body parts probably need to go. Your second thing that I would suggest you do is what I call the slash and insert method. It's a great method for inserting anything that is flat. So look at your body parts, whatever pieces are flat and skinny, and you want to stand along the edge, these are the ones you should do next. So I'm going to show on this sock, which I've already started to cut, but I wanted to just show you how. I know that my eyes are somewhere down here. I'm laying out my dragon scales here, and I'm sort of cutting I cut it a tiny bit shorter than, so I cut a slash into the body, but it's a little shorter than this because it will stretch as you sew. So always make your holes a little smaller than you think you want them to be. We want this to stick out on the outside of the puppet. So when we sew, remember, as I've said before, we always sew inside out. Take your sock, flip it inside out, find that hole that you cut, and take your ridge, insert it into the hole. Make sure you can see it, that it's showing a little bit. So this looks inside out. That is correct. That's how you should be sewing, because once you've sewn it and you flip your body right side out, then you'll see your scales. That's where you want them. Now, for this one, super easy. We're doing an overcast. We're going to go in at the very end and just pull and coming over. So I'm going through the front, through the scales, into the back. You're going through 3 layers here. You're catching all 3 layers closed. So front of the sock, middle layer is your scales, 3rd layer is the back of your sock, or the back of your cut, I guess you could say. These do not have to look pretty. They are on the inside. They are the only really important thing is to make sure you're catching all 3 layers, and you're just pulling it a little bit tight every time. Don't pull it so tight that it gathers up. Just pull it tight enough to close it off. This is a great method for anything that is flat and that you want to stand up. And all of your stitches will be hidden. It might not look so nice on the inside. When you're done, of course, tying a knot, loop, needle through the loop, pulling. I would do it a few times. I'm just going to show you quickly how this looks on the right side once it's done. I didn't quite finish it, so you can see there's that little gap left, but this is how you get a nice ridge standing up on the back. Imagine that was closed. And that's how you get those things to stand up without really seeing your stitches. Yes, you will see a little bit. If you have matching thread, that's great. If you don't, again, pulling tight will help to hide those stitches. You can use this method also to apply any other flat pieces. So I would do ears this way. For example, on this puppet that is partially done, I inserted this ear in that method. That's the slash and insert. There's also another method similar to this, but it's for smaller things, and the only difference is that when you slash, you just want to make a smaller cut. So I have here another sock. This is going to be hair for this puppet, let's say. All you have to do is cut a tiny hole. I'll put my hand inside so you can see. This has already been stretched a little bit because I put the hair through once, but it's the same idea. Cut a tiny little hole, kind of guesstimate where you think you want it. Remember, you've got your eyes on already. You can kind of figure this out. Take your hair, so if you've got this style of hair, or you could do this with these ears as well, it doesn't matter, whatever you're inserting. Push it through the hole, pull it so you get all those things like the yarn and all of that stuff to the wrong side, and then you just flip, and again, you're sewing inside out. So all of your cute stuff is jammed inside of the sock. You're looking at the sock inside out. You're going to use the exact same method, just overcasting all the way around, catching a little bit of the sock and then a little bit of your body part, whether it's hair or ears or whatever it is that you're attaching. This is a good method for anything that has a small, skinny, little pointy end. So these ears, these little mouse ears or whatever they are quite small. And the only difference is you need to make sure you cut a very small hole. Again, it will stretch as you sew, so be careful of that. That is the snip and insert. I'm going to also show you the point of the third thing you should do. So once you have sewn your eyes on, once you have sewn your hair and your things such as that. So the order for this, for example, would be get the eyes on first, then go ahead, flip and cut and do all of these. This one was a snip and insert for the hair, for the ears. This was the slash and insert method that you've already seen. Once you've got all of these things on, then I would go ahead and attach any other parts that are large and bulky. So things like arms that are big at the attachment point. If you have something big like a big hair piece, for example, like this, or on this puppet, I've got this kind of hair. These are hard to do. I shouldn't say these are easy to do, but you don't want to do these until after you've done your little skinny things, because you can imagine if I had to now take this thing with this giant sponge and flip it inside out and try to cut and sew little things such as these ears or this ridge back, that's much harder to do when you have all of that fat stuff inside. So save those big, fat, bulky pieces to be attached at the end. Now, these kinds of pieces, so the arm on this guy and his hair, I use the same method that I used for the eye, because they're bulky pieces with a large attachment point. So use the same method. Don't feel like you need to create something different. Use that same method, do the best you can. This hair in particular looks awesome. It's a little tricky to sew with because the thread really likes to tangle in with the wire mesh. You can imagine how that goes. This would probably be an easier one to attach, but just keep that in mind. It's fun to do, and it's certainly doable. Finally, if you have things like flat items, so for example, this puppet has this flat hair piece, something like that, I actually used a back stitch to attach that. So I can quickly show that with another sock. Again, I'm just pretending your eyes are already on, pretending your eyes are here. Lay this down, and then you can just go ahead and kind of guesstimate where you want to start. So I put my needle in where I think I want to start. If you have a light colored sock, you could also use a pen just to make a little point where your needle starts, and then just bring that needle up. You've got your knot now, you've got your needle in place, and now you're just going to do the same, just a similar kind of an idea where you're just back stitching. So coming up into your hair piece and just pulling it flat, and then a back stitch. Remember, we always go back to fill the gap, forward to make a gap. So I have one hand inside, kind of feeling the needle, the other hand is on top, back to fill the gap, forward to make a new gap. So just, this is a review of the back stitch. Again, those intro videos with the different styles of stitches are really, really useful when it comes to attaching these pieces. So that's just a quick show of how to attach a flat hair piece such as this one. I think I trapped some of her bangs underneath. But that gives you an idea. You're just going to continue to backstitch till you reach the very end of that. So attaching anything flat, if you thought you might want to attach a tail, so for example, if I wanted to take this tail that I had made in another video, and I've decided I like it long and floppy, I don't necessarily want to stuff it, you could do the same thing with this, where you're just going to go ahead and just run a back stitch from end to end, just coming up from underneath and then going back, up from underneath, back to fill the gap, up from underneath, back to fill the gap. So it's the nice thing about doing this style of stitch. You could just do a running stitch, up, down, up, down. This perhaps looks a little neater because it's a solid line, not a broken line, but you decide what works for you. Just some ideas. Okay, I'm going to just quickly wrap up this video by showing you these puppets in progress. So this one here is going to be a dragon kind of a character. He still needs another eye. He needs maybe some teeth to finish him off. This is eventually going to get another arm and a basketball and will be a little athlete puppet. And then I've got this one in progress, which has got the long hair, the ears and whatnot. I will be making individual videos when these are finished. Look at each individual video because I will quickly discuss what techniques were used and how I attached the pieces for each of these finished puppets. So stay tuned.